This podcast is brought to you by Hills Community Aid and has been funded by Castle Hill RSL. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Good Men Don't podcast. This podcast is designed for men, where we talk about building respectful relationships and talking about domestic violence and abuse. Today's topic is about where do you stand? So we talk about good and bad behaviours. So I was posed a question throughout the week on, I guess, a time that I needed to take a stand. And I had to think back because I guess currently I'm in quite a nice position. I've built a strong circle around me with positive friends and family. But there was a time in high school where I found myself to be in a very tricky friends group. And I think that that friends group, I guess, allowed certain behaviors to go on. And I had the option to continue with them, be friends, and I guess be part of that cycle. But what I had to do was confront and talk to my friends at the time about these behaviors and how I felt about them, which was, it was a very negative time. And it was very hard to pull them up. But after pulling them up, we had our differences, and I went my way, they went theirs. I'm not too sure what they're up to now, but I could not be more happier with how that all transpired. Here with me is Warren. Warren, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks, Levi. I think maybe today we might do it a little bit different. I think let's get our guest involved early on than we normally do. We'll come back to what you're just talking about, because I think we've all got some instances to talk about. Excuse me. So our guest today is a little bit different than our normal guests because our previous guests have all been people who are knowledgeable about the subject. And today our guest is not specifically knowledgeable about the subject, but he is very knowledgeable about respectful relationships. He's been married 25 years. So Dominic, let me sort of introduce you first. So the man sitting opposite me has got a lot of worldly experience, I think, and he's been married, as I said, 25 years. So I suspect that suggests he has lots of great experiences to share in terms of building a respectful relationship. And that's what this conversation is about, even though we're talking about where do we stand. So Dominic, welcome to the podcast today. Why don't you just tell our listeners just a little bit about your background first?
Thank you so much, Warren and Levi, for having me here. It's an honour. And my name is Dominic, for those of you who don't know me. I've been in Australia for about 11 years now, and I hail from overseas, specifically from the Middle East, where I spent the majority of my career. My background is in human resources, so people and culture. I've been heading that function for a very long time, and predominantly in a mergers and acquisition space. So I've had the privilege of working with a lot of organizations, to be honest, 50 plus over the last 20 years. And I've managed large teams globally across various countries and continents. The topic is very, very close to my heart. My wife is also very actively involved in the space. And to be honest with you, I've listened to the few podcasts that you've done earlier, and a lot of it resonates with me personally. And I've had to reflect upon those podcasts, and I've kind of looked at it in different ways. And I think that's it's been very refreshing for me to be able to look back on my experience and say, I can see myself doing some of those things, and and the messages that you get from it. And I think it was very brave for the people who came forward on the podcast. So again, my appreciation to all of them for kind of wearing their hearts on their sleeve and coming in and sharing their experiences with the audience.
Great, Dom. Sorry, can I just bring you into this conversation around where do you stand? Because you've obviously, a career like yours, you've probably had to stand up and take a stand at many times, I guess, in corporate life. So I guess I'm just interested in terms of getting on the table, just some experiences we've heard of Levi's. How about you, Dom?
Well, being in the people and culture function, you're dealing with people issues day to day, and you're dealing with them in mass. and you get to see a lot of things, to be honest, sometimes that you don't want to see, and you're always put in a situation where you have to act and have to take, some sensible decisions and some harsh decisions and some very thoughtful and empathetic decisions. And I've been in those situations many a time. My stance is very clear. I don't believe people necessarily do things for ill will or for the wrong intent. I think for them, their intent is very positive.
Yeah.
And over the years, what I've learned is behaviors can be changed. Beliefs can be changed, and it's about having a sort of flexible identity over time. I mean, we all start out with our identities kind of shaped early on in life.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it's important that we adapt and we are flexible to having those identities change over a period of time. And personally, for me, it has changed a lot. I can give you a few examples. I mean, since I've come to Australia in 10 years now, I've lost all four parents, my mum, my dad, and my in-laws. I lost my daughter when she was 4 months old, when we were overseas. I mean, all these things sort of shape your life experiences, change your sort of outlook on life, your belief system, your value systems, and not necessarily for the bad. I think a lot of that is for the good. So you end up looking at life a little bit more, what should I say, objectively, tolerant to others. I believe differences are good. I don't believe differences are bad. Yeah. So it's about learning and sharing different experiences with different people and standing your ground where things are not right, and voicing it and bringing about change.
I think. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Firstly, it must have been really tough when all that was happening, and it's not so easy to look at things so objectively when it's happening at the time. So I'm glad you're able to bring out that silver linings and positive understanding of it all. And you also mentioned earlier on how these podcasts got you thinking about your actions and things like that. And I think that's really important, holding yourself accountable, understanding situations and looking internally. Sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say that I suspect that all of us, as we've been going through this podcast, I know I have too, like Dom, can see myself in some of the situations saying, oh, did I do that?
Yeah.
And I sort of shrink back a bit and say, oh, yeah. Yeah. I've just learned something. I just want to share two examples.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Two examples of having to stand up and be accountable. The first was probably some time ago. I was chairing a not-for-profit, and we were changing the structure of the not-for-profit at the board level, and so we're going from certainly a board that was made up of volunteers to a board that was made up of qualified people who had the right qualifications to contribute to the organisation, because it was an all-Gary organisation. But I was faced at one stage with a vote of no confidence in the chair. That there was one particular person who didn't like the changes because he was going to not be part of the new board, and he could see it, but he didn't like what was happening. So his way of trying to stop the process was to have a vote of no confidence. So,
just for the listeners, what is a vote of no confidence?
Well, essentially, a vote of no confidence is saying we don't trust the way the chair is running the meeting,
right? And
the chair needs to stand down. Yeah, essentially.
I said just for the listeners, but this was definitely just for me.
but that meant I had to stand up and say, no, this is the way we're going to go. Yeah. And if there's a vote of no confidence, well, that can be determined in terms of the outcome. So that was the first one. The second one was more about domestic violence, and I only reflected on this just last night, and just recently there in early May there was a walk against violence against women in the hills, and it started near the shopping centre and went down to the RSL club. It started at 7 o'clock in the morning. And this is the first time in my life I had ever protested against something. Wow. That I was able to get up and say, hey, I'm going to go on that walk. I'm going to stand out there and proudly walk and say, hey, this issue of violence against women is unacceptable. So that leads me to a question. And you've got examples. So the question is, in that process when you stood up for something, were you courageous in doing that, or was it something else?
Yeah. Did you want to go first, Dom, or?
I think definitely it is courageous, because I don't think it's a normal thing for people to stand their ground, especially when the system is working against them. When I mean a system, it could be an organization. In your example, the organization or the board was working against you. It takes a lot of courage, and to have that sort of courage, I guess you have to have a very strong value set and belief in yourself, and what is right and what is wrong, and you have to have that grounding in terms of, this is what I stand for, this is why I joined this organization, and I'm not willing to compromise on those value systems of mine. I can give you a similar example. I worked for an organization where we were at a board meeting. It was a mix of gents and ladies at the board meeting, and the CEO got up and he was asking for reports and performance and budgets for a long time, and he was not getting that from the majority of people around the table. So he just got up and started abusing everyone around the table, saying, if I don't get this, you will all be out of the organization, and we use a lot of flowery language. And to be honest with you, for me, it's about respect. There's a place and a time, and if you want to have a one-to-one conversation with an individual, you do that behind closed doors. But you don't stand up and, berate an entire, board in front of each other. And so after that meeting, I took him aside and had a chat with him in his office. And that took a lot of courage, because my value system is very clear. I mean, we're trying to change this organization for the better. This is what we believe in. This is what we stand by. And yet we have just broken every rule in that book by having the conversation we had with our generals, who are supposed to be, setting good examples for the others and taking this forward. So, yes, it takes a lot of courage, but it takes a lot of conviction in your beliefs as well. That, you're doing it for the right reasons. And, sometimes it backfires. I think probably 80% of the time it backfires, which is why many people don't want to stand up for it.
But at least you took the stand.
But you take the stand.
Absolutely. How about you, Levi?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I would say, because I'm relatively new to, I guess, fighting for what I believe in. At 27, I have gone to a few rallies now. I've gone to some protests. Being in this line of work is relatively new. Prior to this, obviously, high school, you're still forming your ideas, getting that foundations of your morals and ethics. And I think as a younger person, no, I was definitely not courageous. It's really hard to go against the grain, and I guess fight for what you believe in, especially when you're younger, you really care about how you look to society. And like you said, 80% of the time might be really difficult. It's not the outcome you're looking for. I think that as a young person is really difficult. And I think I'll say sometimes when I've gone to, I guess, some protests or anything, I've actually had a negative experience. I think being a guy, so being in I think this field where it's mostly male perpetrators, I have gone to one of these before. We went to one recently, Walk Against Domestic Violence, and I was so scared. I was telling some of my friends, I was like, oh no, I don't want to get there and people look at me in disgust as a male, probably coming in as a perpetrator or whatever. And I think I'm still, building that courage, but, prior to that last experience. And I should also clarify, it was great. Going to that walk, everyone was so welcoming, was so nice. I had some amazing chats with some amazing people. But previously, it wasn't so nice. I would get dirty looks. It would be really difficult to be in that environment, knowing in my heart, all I'm there to do is just help the cause, be there as an ally to the people. So No, it wasn't always courageous for me. I think now, and I think everyone, every now and again, even you guys being older and being a part of this a lot more, you probably still get that little feeling of like, okay, this will take some courage, and you're more settled into that courage. Whereas me, I'm still developing it. I do believe in, what we're doing, and my morals and ethics are like quite strong, but it is still like, all right, mentally preparing for, I guess, such a tough situation or tough topic, or I guess, the protests. It's not rainbows and sunshine. So, yeah.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Levi. But let me say that I was so proud of you that day that you came, you got there, and you confidently walked with the rest of the people.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for young people, and not only older people, but I think this whole issue of courage for me, we've been, in this podcast, we're encouraging guys to stand up, to start the conversation about abuse and domestic violence, and that takes courage. And I guess that's the point I'm trying to lead through here, is that takes courage, and sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable. So we're going to do a bit more work on it now. So we get into the topic a little bit.
Yeah.
So what we did, earlier the year we ran a survey. You remember that, Levi?
Yes.
And we asked a number of people a number of questions about behaviour, appropriate or inappropriate. Now these were mainly about respectful relationships. Pardon me, not necessarily all, but the majority were.
Yeah.
So we got the results of that survey. So we're going to take each question and we'll have a conversation around the table, and then we'll just look at the survey in terms of what the survey result, whether that confirms what we think the answer is.
Sure.
That makes sense?
Perfect sense.
Beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to start at the end rather than the beginning. So the last question we asked was, and I'll just read it to make sure we get the context right.
Sure.
We asked, have you had direct experience or been exposed to abuse or gender-based violence during your lifetime? So what do you reckon the results of that may have been?
I would probably say there's a 80% chance to 90% chance that people would have been exposed to it.
Yep. Okay.
In some form or the other. They might not have their classification of what that means exactly, but I think over the years that has changed dramatically, and there's a much broader sort of dictionary, if you want to call it, for lack of a better word, on what DV is. It could be social abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse. There's so many different aspects to that, and I think that's was the eye opener for me, and that's what got me to reflect after watching all the podcasts. Is yes, I can actually, I can see those examples now. And it's not just what we. Initially probably understood domestic violence as in probably physical abuse, but there's so many forms that can take over the years.
Yeah. No, I think most people would have said yes to this, especially because there's more of an understanding of what domestic violence and abuse is. So it's more easily identifiable. And I think with what's going on around the world where sorry, excuse me. I just think most people would have gone through it. But I'm interested to know what the results were.
It's interesting because when I sort of reflected, when we started this project, I had forgotten my exposure to domestic violence. I saw it in a neighbour when I was a child. But then I'd forgotten all about that. So I didn't have a recent sort of recollection of it. I guess I would have answered, well, I would have, the numbers are a bit low. But we've been doing the work in terms of looking at stats in terms of the amount of people who are involved with domestic violence and abuse. And some of the stats, Levi, you might remember, Dom, one of the things we talked about early on in the very first episode, we looked at a stat that said like 38,000 incidents of domestic violence in Australia in 2024. And we talked about whether, in fact, that was too high or too low. We thought it was far too low, if I remember rightly. But when I sort of reflected on that, at the walk that Levi just mentioned, the police commissioner and other police from Hills were there, and they were saying that the recent figures they have, and this will, for those who are sitting at home, this is going to, what's the right word?
Blow your mind?
Blow your mind, absolutely. They were saying in New South Wales, the police are called to a domestic violence incident every 3 minutes. Just think about that, and think about the ripple effect that has right across the whole community.
Yeah.
So I think it's, I'm with you, Dom. I think it should be if people stop and think, so many people are affected, whether it's not just the offender and the victim or the survivor, but it's the children, if there's children in that marriage or partnership, then there's grandparents, there's neighbours, there's the extended family, there's the police that have to attend. Yeah. They get affected by it. There's a paramedic if there's violence and they have to be there. So, and doctors. So the ripple effect is quite large. So for me, the majority of Australians. How about the survey? What did the survey say?
Survey?
You got the you want to talk about that?
Yes. Do you have the figures?
I've got the figures.
Yeah.
Okay. And this surprised me. Now, remember, this survey was done around about May, I suppose.
Some time ago.
So these latest figures I just quoted from the police is just latest.
Just dropped, right?
So, but anyway, so 22% said they've been affected.
Yeah.
There was another 10% that said they preferred not to say. Now, I don't know what that means, but to me that sort of says that maybe there's something in the background. I don't know. But the greater majority of that group anyway said they hadn't.
Okay.
That really surprised me.
It probably has to do with an awareness as well, Warren and Levi. And I think, you had Dr. Nair on one of your previous podcasts who very eloquently put it, monsters are in the dark.
Yeah.
And things happen behind closed doors. So, like I said, it takes so many different shapes and forms that people are not aware of what it actually means till such time it really, really starts impacting their day-to-day lives. And it gets to a particular point where the pain is unbearable. And that's when that awareness of what's happening comes out.
I don't know, Dom. Like, I think a bit differently where, like, they've said no. I wouldn't want to assume further. Like, you can't assume someone doesn't know what abuse and domestic violence is. It can, I wouldn't be like, oh no, you don't know what you're saying. It probably is yes. And I personally do think like domestic violence and abuse is very prevalent, and I'd be surprised if someone hasn't gone through it a little bit at least. But if they've said no, like there's not much to really combat there. However, it is important that, the education aspect and they're informed of what abuse is. And that wouldn't be through combating them saying no. It's just having it so readily available, I think, for when they feel like, okay, I don't think this is right. How can I check this? How can I see if what's happening isn't okay? And that's, I guess, education through schools, through neighbours, and like everyone just having the word out of like all the different types.
Yeah, I think there's certainly, in the last 12 months, there's certainly been a lot more focus and commentary about abuse and domestic violence. Like the Prime Minister, he talked about it being a national crisis that we have in Australia. So I think for me, and at the same time, we now have laws about coercive control, which we never had before.
Yep.
So I suspect that the increase that the police are seeing is because women are becoming more aware. And they're seeing things for what they are, rather because think back to the victims that we've interviewed. All of them, the two of them, have both said that they were subject to coercive control. But it started and they didn't even realise
the small things
they were being abused until some time down. So maybe all the education is now helping people to recognise it better.
Create that awareness. And that's what I'm saying. In terms of a survey, I mean, there's only so much you can get out of a survey.
No, definitely.
And it's also in terms of what you put in. I mean, have we actually gone out and defined all the parameters of what DD is and what it looks like? If we have not shared that, it's very presumptuous to think that people will have that complete understanding of what that covers. I can, off the top of my head, actually picture 3 or 4 different scenarios around me today where I see DD. In my neighborhood, very close to home, because I see those symptoms, because I'm more aware of it, and I understand how that manifests, whether that's through financial control, and I see a lot of that happening, whether that's through isolation from family members, I see a lot of that happening. So it's there. It's very visible, and I think the education is improving, the awareness is improving, and hopefully with all of that being more readily available, I think it provides a level of security for people to come forward and seek help.
Just with this though, like, this is the now, like, it's great now. However, you guys are in different age brackets, and we noted that domestic violence and abuse, the most common age bracket, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm butchering it, but the rough ages are like 25 to 39 or 49?
49.
49, yeah. So just in saying that, the younger people are definitely educated. And I think what I'm trying to ask is, think back to when you were in high school, Dom, and you, Warren, like, did you have this much education on the stuff you did know about coercive control? Was that even a real thing back then? And I guess, like, what was it like having to adjust your thought process? Because I feel like a lot of elderly people, a bit more resistant to change, and they're less inclined to educate themselves unless required. And I think that's a big issue where, younger people are educated, but now, going back to you, Warren, and you, Dom, what was it like for you guys growing up?
Well, let me just answer from my point of view. I got absolutely nothing.
Oh, no.
That's not quite right. My father did say to me at one stage, because we had this person who was being abused physically as a neighbour.
Yeah.
And my father, and I was about 14, I suspect, he took me aside one day and he said, Warren, he said, you need to learn one lesson.
Yeah.
And that one lesson is that real men don't hit women. And that was all I heard, because we saw it happening with the neighbour. But in terms of any other education, no. So I guess in those days you tend to rely on your values and your principles, and you stand by them. And then hopefully it grows. But no other education. Dom, how about you?
If you have to look back, and if I look back, again, I'm basing all of this on the last few podcasts, which opened my eyes a bit. When we were growing up, things were very different. I don't think it boils down to, your education in terms of professional education. I think all of us can hold a PhD and, probably not deliver half of what someone who doesn't hold a PhD delivers. That's the ground reality. But education is important, but culture is also very important. And the upbringing and the environment in which you're brought up and the experiences that you're exposed to early on in life, all of these things shape it. I can tell you an example. I grew up as a child, and in our day and age, which is completely unacceptable in this day and age, if your teachers in school would discipline you, and it was typically physical discipline. If you didn't perform in class, they would take out a ruler and whack you over the knuckles, or a professor would walk behind you and flick you behind the ear, and that was completely normal. In today's day and age, that's not. In your homes, it was normal for your parents to discipline you. My mum, God bless her soul, was an absolute darling. Short temper, but an absolute darling. She would if she lost her temper, God help you, you had to duck, dive, and dodge a frying pan that came out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
But that was normal.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, and this is where I'm saying flexible identity, your beliefs need to change. We generalize that as kids. We distort that as kids. We delete what that meaning had for us as kids. And then we go later on in life and we realize, oh gosh, that actually meant that. It could have meant that.
Yeah.
And we just generalized it and passed it, swept it under the rug as normal.
Yeah.
But it's not normal.
Yeah.
There are consequences for those actions, and we need to be accountable and responsible for those consequences, as and when we grow up. So, which is why I'm saying it is constantly evolving. As much as it is important for us to learn something, I think it is equally important for us to unlearn things that are not taking us forward anymore.
Yeah.
So the unlearning is as important as the learning.
Yeah.
In terms of answering that question before, the next question we've got to debate actually talks about a behaviour that did exist back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
So in those days, women would walk past a construction site
Yeah.
and maybe some of the men on the site would wolf whistle and cheer them on.
Yeah.
So we asked everyone the question, is that okay today? So we said, is it okay to wolf whistle at someone that you like
Yeah.
while they were walking in the street?
Yeah.
So it was acceptable back in the 50s.
Yeah.
Is that acceptable today?
I would say probably not. No, definitely not. I can't imagine any of my friends thinking they would enjoy getting wolf whistled at. They would probably throw something at the person wolf whistling at them. No, it's definitely not. It's a bit of a respect thing. It's not okay. It's like, I don't know, borderline deemed as harassing someone. I don't think it has a place, but I have heard that back in the day it was seen as like a respectful thing on a positive side, on the positive way. But no, I think nowadays it's definitely changed and it's not appreciated. Yeah.
I'm with you. I think it's unacceptable these days.
Well,
Dom?
why? Just quickly before we get to you, Dom, like, why was it acceptable back then? Like, did you ever think to yourself, like, oh wait, they might not like this?
No, I don't think. No. Well, I never did it.
Okay.
So I can only assume, I guess, what guys were thinking.
Is this because you couldn't whistle or you didn't know?
Because I was just too shy or
Okay.
something. No, look, I think I think guys that did it probably would say that when they did it, they were giving a compliment
Yeah.
to the lady walking down the street. Well, that's how they were justified in their own. Because remember, at that stage, this whole aspect of abuse and domestic violence was very much under the carpet.
Sure.
So it wasn't a profile.
Sure.
It's interesting, sort of. I decided to just Google and use AI to see what that might tell me about wolf whistling. And it actually said it's a form of street abuse, which is what you said.
Yeah, a bit of harassment.
In a different way, different language. So these days it is quite different. Dom, have you got a different point of view or about with us?
I don't think it's acceptable because it robs away someone's freedom and choice. I mean, I think as young men, you want significance. You get that significance, by exercising your right and your freedoms. Unfortunately, it's at someone else's expense. And, I mentioned this maybe. Freedom without respect is nothing but control. So if you're controlling someone else, that doesn't make them feel very good because you've taken away all their rights and freedoms. And respect without freedom is fear. So it works both ways. I think if there's probably a place for everything in life, and if it was my wife walking down next to me and a high wolf whistle is probably fine at her, but not at anyone else, because like I said, we have a special relationship. To take it for granted and assume that it's all right to do it for someone else, for a stranger, or even people within your friend circle, without seeking permission or understanding what that impact is wrong.
And this is what it was. This is what it is now. But growing up for you, was it ever okay? And I know you didn't grow up in Australia, but
growing up, my wife had it done to her, and that didn't feel very safe.
How did she feel? What did she tell you?
She felt fearful. She was walking down an alley, and she was fearful. But it was a lot more, I think, for her disrespect, because it was not grown adults that were doing it. It was children who were like 10 years old and 12 years old.
Wow.
And she was like double or triple their age at that point in time. And it was like, my gosh, I didn't expect that to come out of a 10-year-old.
It makes you wonder.
It makes you wonder. So, but again, it's about nipping things in the bud. And I think that's very important. And I think, it starts off innocent. It starts off sometimes as very small things. But if you let those things fester, become patterns, and, those patterns then, it's very hard to change. So she nipped it in the bud. She went up to the two of them and,
And certainly the experience your wife has had there is very much reflected in people I've spoken to, where they've actually said they were fearful. They would not walk down that
certain roads,
lane or that street again. That was so bad. Now, the survey results, let's have a check in terms of what the survey said. 94% of respondents to the survey said it's unacceptable. There were a few people, outliers, that still sort of hedged a bit. And some said it was maybe, and others said, So, and it's interesting when I looked at the demographics of the people who responded to the survey, we had a wide range of nationalities and things like that. So maybe somewhere along there, there is some answers. But generally speaking, the great majority said unacceptable.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next question.
Sure.
Now, the next one is, this is a good one, I think. Is it okay to want to know your partner's location at all times? Well,
gosh.
Levi, you're the youngest.
Youngest.
Come on.
Okay.
Would you want to know your partner's... if you did have a partner, would you want to know your partner's relationship, whereabouts at all times?
Gosh.
Are you a jealous heart?
Am I... Yes, but also not really. Is it okay? Thanks for noting I don't have a partner, Warren. I don't have... This is very hypothetical for me. I think it's situational. Like I think inherently not okay to say, okay, I want to know your location. But it would be a conversation of like, I would like to know your location if you're going overseas, and it's more of a safety thing. But at the end of the day, I believe it's completely up to them. As much as I would want to know their location, because in my heart, it's purely for safety. But if they say no, what can you do? And it's like vice versa, right? Like if they want to know my location, it's, well, I don't feel comfortable because of XYZ. So no, I would say it's not okay, but it can be a conversation. Like I think everything can be talked about. If you're, a bit nervous about something, I'm sure, you can talk it out with your partner. But it is their decision. How about you? Let's go Dom. How about you?
I mentioned earlier I lost a child when we were 4 months old.
Yeah.
And that changes you.
Yeah.
I've now got two beautiful kids. One's 23 and one's 22 and one's 21. As a parent, you're always got this insecurity in you, and you realize it's not their insecurity, it's your insecurity.
Yeah.
And in terms of wanting them to be safe, want to be able to be there for them whenever they need you. So sometimes it's a hard decision, but the good thing is I've got a very, very open relationship with both my children, and they travel quite a bit, and we've always mentioned. I mean, and we share our location with them. I have nothing to hide as a father or a mother. We have nothing to hide from our kids, and it's about creating an environment where people feel safe, trusted, and not judged.
Yeah.
And because they travel, for us, it's important if they get stranded somewhere that they have someone to rely on.
Yeah.
Likewise, I share my location with my wife, and she shares hers with me. It's a mutual thing. It is not one forcing on the other or the other, but it's not for the purpose of tracking people's whereabouts. It's more in terms of, we're getting older. We drop our phones, we lose things, and you want to be able to track where your phone is.
Yeah.
So it's done for different reasons. And I think if your reasons are genuine and your reasons are with care and sensitivity and not intrusive of someone's privacy, and it's mutual, I believe those are, it's fine if both parties are agreeing to it. But if it's one way and it's coercive and it's for other intentions, and I think this is where you need to dig deep in terms of why you're doing what you're doing, then it's wrong.
Can I challenge that a little bit?
Please.
Because we know through research that perpetrators, male perpetrators, some do want to know exactly where their wife or partner is at all times.
Yes.
So the question for me is, why do they want to do that? Which is, we haven't talked about that part, and I think we need to actually explore that.
Yeah. I think, like it's, why are we any different, right? Like, we say it's a safety thing. It's for whatever reason, nothing to hide. I agree. Like, from our previous podcast, we know a perpetrator is anyone like you and me, dressed the same. Nothing is actually different. You can't tell a perpetrator from just an everyday person because they are just everyday people. You can't tell. So, I mean, personally, I feel like the difference is having that open communication. So if your daughter had said, "Hey, I'd like to turn my location off," it might be a conversation, but do you know at the end of the day, it's up to them? Like
they turn it off all the time, and I have no issues with it.
Yeah.
And that's what I was getting to in terms
Sure.
of you have to have that relationship of trust.
Yeah.
We are not there to track. That was not the intention. Has never been the intention. It's more in terms of safety because you're overseas in a foreign country. If there is something, if you lose your phone, if you want us to track it, I mean, there's only one way to do it. If you share a location,
Yeah.
if you want to, party with your friends and you want your privacy, that's perfectly fine as well. But I think going back to what Warren said is, I don't think in those particular instances, Warren, that it's a mutual thing. I think it's the sharing of location that is one way.
Yep.
And when it's not mutual, when it's not reciprocal, when it's not done with trust, and that's where the issues are.
Yep. Like my understanding, I went to a conference on coercive control. This is probably about this time last year.
Sure.
And the person who was talking about it and presenting it talked about the ways that some perpetrators go to have control over their partner, to always know, and to instill fear that they knew where they were and they could come and whatever. The way they would use tracking devices on their car or in their clothes, in their handbag, the way they would use their phone and be able to use that as a tracking device, which is something that we all we do because we have loved ones, we just want to know where they are, but the perpetrators do it for other reasons.
Correct.
And that's the thing that I guess that that conference told me is that it's about that control, which is what Navin was talking about. It's it's how they control people and how they instill fear that in their partner.
And that's the difference, Warren.
Yeah.
It's about do you walk away with that with a feeling of fear, or do you walk away from that with a feeling of safety? And I think those are that's where there is a difference. So if my daughter or my son walks away from that situation feeling safer, and they are feeling safer, or are they walking away feeling fear, as in dad's big brother's watching me, or dad's watching me. So they have to feel safe with it. And if that feeling is safety, then I think it's a good thing.
Yep.
If the feeling is not safety, and it's one-sided and it's not mutual or whatever, then it's a no-go.
And certainly the survey results showed that there was about 50-50. And the comments that people made were, it's okay when all partners are happy to do it, but it's unacceptable when it's hidden.
Hidden agenda.
Yeah, hidden agenda. Yeah. So we need to go on to the next question?
Sure. Yeah,
okay, next question is a little bit the same. And I guess, is it okay to make your partner feel guilty for spending time with other people?
That's interesting choice of words. I feel like we've gone the last couple of times. Warren, what do you think? And now and back then when you were growing up.
Okay. I think, for me, the answer is very similar in some ways to what we've just been saying.
Yeah.
When my wife wants to talk of other people, she is her own person.
Sure.
And I don't want to control who she talks to or which people she moves with. We might talk about, she met a new person, da-da-da-da-da, and we might, is there any red flags there or whatever? I don't use that sort of language, but generally, because we have a good level of trust, I'm comfortable, but not to interfere.
Right.
If I go back, you asked me about early on.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, if I go back to my early days when I was first married, I think my wife and I had virtually the same value, that we were comfortable, provided, and I guess there is a provision, and it's never happened, but provided there's not a glaring red flag that someone may be a really inappropriate person.
Yeah. Well, okay. It's great that you guys were so in sync. But I guess I meant more so growing up. What's the word? Did you, like before marriage kind of thing, did you think it was okay?
I think before marriage I was so immature.
Not even you, or even like friends and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think I was probably so immature I never even thought about it, to be honest. Because I had a fairly sheltered life growing up.
Sure.
And I probably only really came out of my... I matured, I guess, when I was early 20s, early 30s, when I was moved. I was asked to leave home.
Yeah.
We just got married. We moved to Sydney. We had no
You were
friends,
asked to
no
leave
relatives
home?
down here. So we had to step up to the plate fairly quickly.
Yeah, right.
But apart from, before that, I was pretty immature.
Yeah. Do you think, the immaturity, this kind of resonates with that immaturity where, you would, I guess, be a bit more inclined to share how you feel, like, oh, you don't like this person, like stop talking to them kind of thing? Did you ever do anything like that? Or was it more of, is it like an older thing where was that more acceptable? Because now I think everyone would be similar, on the similar page. But did you ever, like growing up, have friends that thought that was normal, or it's never been a thing?
No.
Yeah,
don't think
right.
so. No.
Sure.
Not that I can remember.
Sure. How about you, Dom?
I can count on my fingers where we have stepped away from relationships because those relationships were not healthy for the two of us. It was not a one-sided thing. So we have stepped away from friend circles because those friend circles were toxic friend circles.
Sure.
Or, they were not common values or shared values that we had. So asking people to step away, it's a discussion. It's a conversation. It is sharing openly why that is important. But in the same breath, I can tell you of situations that I'm aware of where a couple, one partner is telling the other partner that they can't have their in-laws home
Yeah.
And that's not allowed, or you don't make calls to them, or, so, or, this is the group of friends that you hang around with. You shouldn't be hanging around with them anymore. There's no logical reason why. It's just that you shouldn't be hanging around with them anymore. Those are toxic. Those are not healthy. Those are one-way conversations or one-way communications. They're not conversations. It's about understanding, again, the reasons why you're doing the things you're doing, and is that something that your partner supports, that your partner understands, or is it just driven out of fear? It's driven out of control, and I guess it's very easy for the other person to realize that immediately if they're being true to themselves. If my wife came around and said, "Okay, I don't want you hanging around with your brothers anymore, or with your family or with your close friends," if there was no logical reason behind it, then that would be a red flag. And because that's not something that you would do, because that diminishes someone's freedom, that instills fear. It isolates them, and the last thing you want to do is isolate them. And that's those are red flags. If you're being isolated, that's a red flag, because you don't have a support mechanism to fall back on.
I think one of the things that I just thinking about when we had that conversation around respectful relationships, and Robert was in the studio, and he talked about a word called reciprocity. I can't pronounce it properly.
That's perfect. Reciprocity.
And for me, because that was all about, I guess, supporting each other. Having boundaries, setting those and agreeing those boundaries, and working, and equality. And for me, they're the things that we would like people to have, rather than someone who takes control one way or another, and to the degree that influences the other person so much.
No, I guess this again is hypothetical for me because it assumes I have a partner. But it's also the choice of words. Like, to make them feel guilty is very, like, of course not. No one wants to make someone feel guilty.
Unless it's for the purpose of having control.
Exactly, yeah. And that's a very dangerous game. And, chances are you are the perpetrator in the situation and are abusing your partner. So if you're listening and, you're doing that, then I'd take a hard look in the mirror. Yes, it's never okay to make them feel guilty. It is a conversation of, like, I guess if you're worried and, this person might be not a good role model or not a good person to hang out with, you can talk to them about it, but it is ultimately their decision. I will say, though, maybe it's slightly different, but, having gone on some dates and I guess talk, to people and I hear situations, and we kind of, there's one instance in particular, we came up with like a hypothetical of like, oh, you just met some person, how would you go about it? And you know what? It's actually very different because everyone's entitled to their own way of life, and we didn't end up going out. But long story short, it was just like the difference in values, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong way about it. But for this person, she was more okay with like meeting someone and then just bringing them back to their place as friends, and not like really know anything about them. Me, I would be very, very nervous to, meet someone first day and then bring them back to mine. And there was nothing wrong with it. We just had a bit of a discussion of like, is there like not a safety concern, whatever. But me coming more so from the scared side of like, this person might kill me. But they were very like relaxed about it and like thinking, it's fine, it could be a new friend, whatever. I think it's important to recognize like differences early on, but it is also like in relationships, people change, right? People's, they might go from saying one thing of, okay, I don't want to surround myself with these types of people, and then maybe they do. And that change may be like difficult in the relationship, I think.
Okay, so thanks for that, Levi. Look, what the survey say? Let's have a look at that. Yeah, like over 90% of people said that's unacceptable, which is essentially what we've been saying. I think so. That's encouraging that that's there.
Yeah.
So maybe one last question before we wrap up. So we asked another question. The question was, is it okay to raise your voice or to shout at your partner when you're angry or you want to get a point across? Well.
Interesting. I do have maybe a different perspective on this. So I'll let you go first, Dom.
Okay, if I have to put my hand on my heart,
Yeah.
I will put my hand on my heart and say that's happened quite a few times over our 25 years of marriage.
Yeah.
But I think if I look back on all of those occasions, and there are probably quite a few of them, the intentions were very clear. The love for each other was very clear.
Sure.
The strength of the relationship was very clear. So I think if it's healthy, and this is, again, it's hard to quantify, it's hard to put it into perspective unless you've been there, done that. But deep down, every couple have healthy debates. And sometimes...
What's a healthy debate, though? Like, I don't know. It's a fine line, right?
It's... If the intentions are mutual, so yes, we would disagree on a certain topic, and disagreement is good.
Yeah.
We're individual people. We've got our own viewpoints. We've got our own experiences, and we bring all of that to a relationship. And the relationship is about compromise, right? It's not about right or wrong. It's about compromise. So one party has to compromise a little bit more maybe than the other party has to. But you do it, and you'll do it willingly because it's for the benefit of a healthy relationship. I think at that particular moment in time, it may feel challenging. And this is where I say flexible identity. Change is hard. And I think the thought process behind that is some time out. I think when it gets into a discussion or it gets into a debate, sometimes you can be really passionate about those topics and your point of view. And I don't necessarily condone, shouting at your partner. That's not what I'm talking about. And these conversations are behind closed doors, so it's between husband and wife, so it's not out in public for sure. But it's about being healthy in that. It's about walking away from that, knowing that your relationship is better off, not that your relationship is worse off. And we know that. We do things to improve our relationship going forward. If it is not that way, and if it is done with the intention to silence your partner, silence your partner is no other. It's another form of control, and that's wrong. But it's never done in that way. It's done in the way to say, okay, fine, I've got a really strong viewpoint, and I bring my strong viewpoint across the table. And sometimes, yes, it results in elevated voices. It results in, being passionate about the topic, and But again, it's done with the intention that we're trying to find some middle ground. And if that is done with that intention to find a middle ground, and not done with the intention to, my way or the highway, then I think it's healthy. But that every situation, every environment is different. And it is about you finding that balance with your partner in that environment. Talking over your partner's head is wrong. I don't think there's any other way to put it, but it's wrong. Disrespecting your partner is wrong. There's no other way to put that. Losing trust with your partner is absolutely wrong because it takes you forever to build that back again. So if you're doing it for the good intentions of the relationship, yes. If it is done with any other ill intent, or if it's damaging the relationship, then you need to be aware and step back. But I think what happens with us is, and I'm sorry, I'm ranting a little bit, is our first instinct is our reptilian brain, and all the experiences we've had in life is then translates to emotion, which is controlled by our middle brain. So you feel the greatest amount of pain when something triggers an emotion. It's not necessarily a poke and a dig and something physical, but you feel tremendous amount of pain when it triggers that emotional middle brain. And it's only when you sit and rationalize and sit and have a conversation and take a time out that you start processing those decisions in your frontal brain, and you come up with, much better choices. So I think sometimes we get trapped in our middle brain.
Yeah.
So, and it happens to the best of us, and we get trapped in that middle brain, and those emotions are, running wild, and everyone's firing off signals. But when we take a time out,
but the thing
improve.
that for me that's really important is the word they used regularly, the intent. So, what is the intent? And this applies to most of these questions, because if the intent is about restricting, controlling, providing fear, intimidating, that clearly is unacceptable.
Yeah.
I think we'd all agree with that.
Correct. But it's not your perceived intent.
Yeah.
It is how the other person
Absolutely.
perceives it.
Yep.
So, and that's where it's important. So
Yep.
I might not think that, I'm in a wrong place. But if my partner and my wife says, Dom, that's unacceptable,
Yep.
you are understanding of that to say, okay, you've crossed a boundary or you've stepped over a line and you need to regulate yourself. So it's about what that means for them, not necessarily what that means for you. It's hard.
Yeah.
But like I said, 25 years later, you kind of get the pulse of how things work. And you're in sync probably 99% of the time. There is that 1% that you're not in sync. But initially when we got married, we're probably not in sync 50% of the time. And that's the fun part, right?
Yeah.
You'll get to learn each other, you'll get to grow and whatever else. And that's, they call that honeymoon phase. So that's all excitement. So
I guess raising your voice, I feel like it does happen in relationships. Shouting, I am heavily against. I think that's never okay, actually. Because it shouldn't get to that stage. Like, you should never feel the need. You should never get angry enough to want to shout at your partner. Raising your voice, I think it does just happen naturally, because people, when they are, I guess, invested in a conversation, and I say, like, if I'm talking about something I like, if I'm talking about sports or something, it'll slowly get a bit louder and louder, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not going to be seen as abuse. I'll be talking with my friends. So it is, I guess, you're passionate. And in this instance, you're probably passionate about your point, which can lead to a raised voice. Now, I guess it's tricky, right? I do think there's a bit of a civil line. And I think, honestly, you were pretty spot on with the intent. I am going to go back to one of my instances where I was a bit shocked, where I had been talking to this person. It was actually a friend. We were arguing about something. And then she says, I don't appreciate you raising your voice at me. But I thought I was speaking like I am right now. Like, I was level-headed. I was having this conversation. And I took it as a hit. I was like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, in my head, I'm not going to say that. But I was like, what? I'm not raising my voice. I'm not doing anything. And that made me upset, honestly, because I'm not raising my voice. I feel like I am getting my point across. However, they've now told me, hey, I'm feeling uncomfortable with how this is progressing. And it took me a second to realize it's not about me anymore. The other person doesn't feel comfortable.
That's exactly the point that Dom was making.
And I think it's so hard in the moment, because you're like, what the heck are you, like, in my head I was like, what the heck is going on?
That's why that emotional intelligence and emotional control is so important.
So important these days.
It's so important because shouting is absolutely, there's a time and a place for it. I mean, we go for a soccer match and we'll be shouting top of our lungs because we're passionate about our team winning that game, right?
I'd be surprised if you didn't. Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. There's, again, it's context. It's perception. It's context. A stranger outside the room, I think we're sitting here and three of us are having an argument if they hear us from outside, but three of us are having a very intellectual debate. Raising your voice could also mean passion. So it could mean so many different things. It's what tag are you putting on it when you're having that conversation? And does the other person feel the same way?
Yep.
Exactly.
So, guys, I'm going to bring this to a head. Just before we do wrap up, the survey said, the great majority said, it's not acceptable. Which is essentially what we're saying. So I think we're on the right track. So at least we can sort of maybe walk out our heads high this afternoon. So we at least are partially right anyway, most cases.
Yeah.
But look, this has been a fantastic conversation. Dom, look, thank you for your time. We really appreciate you coming along and sharing not just your experiences, but your life in many ways in terms of sharing that and talking about your family. And when you talked about losing a child and the impact that has, I have no idea, no perception of what that does to a relationship. And I think that's really important that you're able to be able to talk about some of that impact and how it affects your relationship with your spouse. So thank you for coming along. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much
we really
for having
appreciate
me
it.
here.
And I guess we've only got one more episode to do, Levi.
Yeah.
But before we do, can you sort of wrap up for the day, and then we'll think about what's next.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Thanks again, Dom. We really appreciate your time and efforts coming in, having a chat about a pretty difficult topic. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you, Levi.
To the listeners, we really appreciate you tuning in again. This week did feel a bit tougher. Hopefully it got you thinking about, if you have any tendencies, or if you're thinking, hey, maybe I do, have that tendency, or maybe you wolf whistle and, maybe you raise your voice, or you shout at your partner. Maybe just have a think about that. Again, as always, if you'd like to email us, you can email us at goodmenproject@hca.org.au. That's goodmenproject@hca.org.au. And if you would like any resources that might assist with these tendencies, you can visit our website on www.hca.org.au. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate everyone tuning in. And we'll see you next time for our last episode. All right.
Goodbye.
See ya. Thanks for joining us. This podcast is for information and educational purposes. The views expressed by the hosts and their guests are their own views and do not constitute professional advice. Listeners should consult professionals for specific advice tailored to their needs. We make no representation or warranties concerning the accuracy, completeness, or applicability of the information in the podcast.